Almost everything that governs people's lives wasn't consciously chosen. It was inherited, repeated, swallowed without chewing. There are lies that no one agrees to believe, but everyone accepts as if they were natural laws. And that's where the silent signs that go unnoticed reside. When someone lives tired without knowing why, frustrated without a clear cause, or trapped in repeating cycles, the body begins to speak first. Early warning signs appear, small hidden symptoms, subtle discomforts that many insist on ignoring. It's not bad luck, nor misfortune. They are signals from the body warning that something learned without questioning is taking its toll. The problem is that these lies are socially acceptable. They don't sound dangerous, they sound normal, and that's precisely why they produce silent symptoms, automatic decisions, unrealistic expectations, repeated behaviors that seem harmless. Most people don't notice because they've never been taught to observe the signals their body is giving them. And when they do notice, they're usually already dealing with symptoms they shouldn't ignore. Exhaustion, anxiety, a feeling of always being behind in life. The good news is that there's a simple way to break this cycle. Learn to see what almost no one discusses aloud. Throughout this content, you will recognize beliefs that always seemed too obvious to question. And upon recognizing them, something changes. Clarity arrives quickly, almost like a physical relief. It's like turning on the light in a room where you've been stumbling in the dark for years. If you've ever felt something was wrong but couldn't explain it, perhaps these silent signs were right all along. The lemming cliff dive hoax. There's a famous story about lemmings throwing themselves off cliffs en masse, as if it was something natural, inevitable. The experienced mentor usually smiles when someone repeats this without thinking, because then silent signs of how myths spread appear. The little-known detail is that this behavior was staged in an old documentary, a prime example of how we ignore early warning signs. When the majority accepts a narrative without questioning, hidden symptoms of automatic thinking emerge. It's the same mechanism that makes someone follow an opinion just because everyone says so. These are signals from the body and mind asking for a pause. Something doesn't add up. Don't ignore that strange feeling that you're just repeating what you've heard. In everyday life, the same pattern repeats itself with small and large decisions, almost like initial symptoms of conformity. A person sees a group going in one direction and follows suit, even feeling warning signs in their stomach. A simple example, choosing a career simply because it pays well or because the family approved, ignoring signals that their body has been telling them for years. The mentor would suggest something practical. Before deciding, write down 3 reasons that are truly yours, not inherited. If you freeze, that's one of the symptoms you shouldn't ignore. Reading books like Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill helps to understand how conscious decisions are born from reflection, not from following the herd. This simple exercise already reveals silent symptoms of poorly digested choices. Gradually, the person begins to see where they are simply following. The most curious thing is that almost no one likes to admit this because it hurts their ego. Recognizing that you followed the herd activates internal warning signals, like a discomfort that's hard to explain. Even so, this discomfort is healthy. It's an early warning sign of mental maturity. The mentor would say that observing this discomfort without running away from it is the first step towards autonomy. It's worth trying something simple. In the next automatic decision of the day, stop for 10 seconds and ask yourself, is this really mine? This small habit reveals hidden symptoms of repeated patterns. And when this question starts to arise, naturally, the next myth accepted without discussion begins to become visible. The natural is healthy scam. There's a comfortable belief that anything natural is automatically good for you, and experienced mentors quickly notice the silent signs of this mental shortcut. The word natural sounds safe, almost therapeutic, but it hides hidden symptoms of simplistic thinking. Snake venom is natural, toxic mushrooms too, and yet they aren't healthy. Still, many people ignore these warning signs and consume ideas, products, and habits simply because they come with that label. It's a classic example of how the brain likes shortcuts to save energy. When something seems too simple, early warning signs appear. Don't ignore the feeling that they're selling comfort, not truth. In everyday life, this manifests in diet, supplements, and even lifestyle advice. People might replace prescribed medication with a miracle tea recommended in some video, even when their bodies are showing signs that something is wrong. The mentor would suggest a practical step. Always ask, what is the evidence for this, before adopting a habit just because it seems natural. Reading reliable sources, such as popular science books or reputable health channels, helps filter out symptoms you shouldn't ignore. A simple example is comparing studies, not just product promises. This habit reduces silent symptoms of self-deception. Gradually, the person learns to differentiate between what is natural and what is truly healthy. The most delicate point is that this belief is rarely discussed aloud because it sounds nice. Questioning it provokes social discomfort, another of the internal warning signs. But this discomfort is a good guide. It's the body's signal that something deserves analysis. The mentor often says that thinking takes work, but it avoids greater pain later. It's worth trying something practical. Before accepting natural advice, write down possible real risks and benefits. This simple exercise exposes hidden symptoms of impulsive decisions. And when this illusion begins to crumble, another belief, equally accepted without debate, begins to demand attention. The customer is always right absurdity. Few people realize it, but the phrase, "the customer is always right," carries silent signs of distorted reality. The experienced mentor observes that this idea originated as a business strategy, not as absolute truth. When someone repeats it thoughtlessly, early warning signs emerge about poorly defined boundaries. Not every customer is right, just as not every criticism is valid. Ignoring this creates hidden symptoms of chronic frustration, both in the service provider and the customer. The body feels it. Tension in the shoulders, constant irritation, that feeling of injustice that doesn't go away. These are signs that your body is telling you to reconsider the belief. In the workplace, this manifests when someone accepts abuse to keep the peace. The person swallows insults, even with clear internal warning signs, believing it's part of the game. The mentor would suggest something practical, establishing clear boundaries before conflict arises. For example, agreeing on objective service rules or deadlines in writing already reduces silent symptoms of emotional burnout. In personal relationships, the same principle applies. Listening doesn't mean agreeing with everything. A good exercise is to practice firm and polite responses such as, "I understand your point, but I don't agree." This simple habit protects against symptoms you shouldn't ignore, such as burnout and resentment. The most curious thing is that this phrase is often used to avoid difficult conversations. It acts as a quick fix that hides deeper warning signs. The mentor reminds us that healthy relationships survive honest dialogue, not automatic submission. When a person begins to question this idea, they perceive hidden symptoms of other equally fragile social beliefs. It's like pulling a loose thread and noticing that the entire fabric was hastily stitched together. And at that point, almost without realizing it, another everyday illusion begins to reveal itself just ahead. The "I'm a good driver" delusion. Almost everyone considers themselves a good driver, and an attentive mentor notices these silent signs of collective self-deception. Statistically, this doesn't add up, but the brain likes this narrative because it protects the ego. When someone says, "I drive well," They rarely analyze real data from their own behavior, and early warning signs are ignored. Unnecessary acceleration, distractions on the cell phone, minor recklessness become normal. These are hidden symptoms of overconfidence, one of the most dangerous. The body even warns you, with tension behind the wheel or frequent startles, signals that your body is telling you to review your habits. Don't ignore this discomfort disguised as confidence. In everyday life, this illusion appears in areas beyond just driving. People believe they communicate well, lead well, and manage money well, even with clear warning signs around them. A mentor would suggest something practical, measuring instead of assuming. In driving, this could mean using apps that show driving patterns. In finances, tracking expenses for a month. In communication, asking for honest feedback from someone you trust. These small tests reveal symptoms you shouldn't ignore. A simple example is noting how many times you pick up your phone while driving in a week. The result is usually surprising and gently shatters the illusion. The key point is understanding that trust without verification becomes a risk. The mentor often says that humility is a strategic tool, not a flaw. When a person accepts observing their own warning signs, they gain real room for improvement. This process reduces silent symptoms of repeating mistakes. And the curious thing is that by dismantling this personal illusion, other equally empty motivational phrases begin to sound strange. That's when another popular belief needs revision, almost drawing attention between the lines. The "just be yourself" lie. The phrase "be yourself" seems harmless, almost comforting, but the experienced mentor recognizes in it silent signs of dangerous oversimplification. No one is born perfect, and repeating this without context ignores early warning signs about personal growth. When someone takes this idea literally, they can end up crystallizing bad habits as if they were their identity. "That's just how I am" becomes an elegant excuse not to change. These are hidden symptoms of emotional and intellectual stagnation. The body feels this blockage in the form of recurring frustration, signs that your body is telling you that something needs to evolve. Don't ignore this discomfort disguised as authenticity. In practice, this manifests when a person refuses to learn basic interpersonal skills. They interrupt others, are always late, react poorly to criticism, and still claim they are simply being honest. The mentor would suggest a simple adjustment, separating essence from behavior. Essence can be maintained, but behavior is trainable. A practical example is choosing one skill per month to hone, such as active listening or time management. Reading books like The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey helps identify symptoms you shouldn't ignore in this process. Small, conscious changes reveal how much being yourself can be an improved, not stagnant, version of yourself. The subtlest point is that this phrase often appears precisely when someone avoids responsibility. It acts as a shield against feedback, another social warning sign. The mentor reminds us that true authenticity includes discomfort and adjustment, not rigidity. When a person begins to question this comfortable lie, silent signs of maturity emerge. This questioning opens up space to perceive how many only show edited versions of themselves to the world. And that's where the next illusion, greatly amplified nowadays, begins to come into play. The social media highlight reel. Social media resembles a trophy album, and the observant mentor sees silent signs of distorted comparison. What appears is only an edited snapshot, but the brain treats it as complete reality, ignoring early warning signs. By consuming these snippets daily, hidden symptoms of inadequacy emerge. The other person's life always seems more advanced, happier, more organized. The body reacts with mild anxiety, chest tightness, mental fatigue, signs that your body is telling you to slow down. Don't ignore this fatigue that arises after scrolling for a few minutes. It's not laziness, it's an excess of unrealistic stimulation. In everyday life, this translates into unrealistic goals and hasty decisions. The person changes their plans every week because they saw someone win overnight, even with clear internal warning signs. The mentor would suggest something practical, limiting consumption and increasing conscious production. For example, choosing specific times for social media and using free time for concrete actions, such as studying a topic for 30 minutes or walking without a cell phone. Reading honest biographies, such as Jeff Bezos's The Everything Store, helps to see the process behind the success. This contrast reveals symptoms that you shouldn't ignore regarding inflated expectations. Gradually, the comparison loses its power. The most dangerous detail is confusing visibility with value. The mentor reminds us that silence and consistency build more than likes. When someone realizes this, positive warning signs emerge. More focus, less urgency, calmer decisions. These are silent signs of digital maturity. Questioning others' reels opens up space to review ready-made excuses used daily. And it's curious how, soon after this realization, automatic justifications begin to sound strange, requiring a more attentive look at the next step. The "sorry I'm late, traffic was terrible" defense. The excuse of traffic is almost an automatic reflex, and the experienced mentor identifies in it silent signs of outsourcing responsibility. It's not always a lie, of course, but when it becomes a pattern, early warning signs of flawed planning emerge. The person repeats the phrase as if chance governed everything, ignoring hidden symptoms of lack of margin. The body feels this constant rush, shortness of breath, tension before appointments, chronic hurry. These are signs that your body is telling you that something in the rhythm is wrong. Don't ignore this recurring stress, disguised as urban normality. In everyday life, this defense mechanism also appears outside of traffic. "I didn't have time. Something happened, it was unforeseen," become frequent shields, even when the warning signs were there early on. The mentor would suggest something practical and simple, creating time buffers, leaving 15 minutes earlier, reducing back-to-back appointments, planning alternative routes. It seems small, but it eliminates many silent symptoms of constant lateness. A useful exercise is to write down, for a week, the real reasons for your lateness. This record reveals symptoms you shouldn't ignore about repeated choices. Awareness grows when the excuse loses its power. The most interesting point is that taking responsibility doesn't generate guilt, it generates control. The mentor often says that those who anticipate less apologize more. When a person accepts observing their own warning signs, they realize that many unforeseen events were predictable. This adjustment brings calm and self-respect, silent signs of maturity. And when this automatic narrative falls apart, another social promise, equally accepted without question, begins to sound strange, almost begging to be analyzed more carefully. The "let's get lunch" social contract. The phrase, "let's schedule a lunch" sounds friendly, but the attentive mentor perceives in it silent signs of empty social contracts. Often it's not a real invitation, just a social lubricant to end the conversation without conflict. When this is repeated, early warning signs of indirect communication emerge. The person leaves excited, creates expectation, and then feels that slight discomfort when nothing happens. This discomfort is one of the hidden symptoms of symbolic promises without practical intention. The body reacts with subtle frustration, signals that your body is telling you to adjust expectations. Don't ignore this small, recurring disappointment. In professional and personal life, this manifests as a dance of cordiality without commitment. The mentor would suggest something practical, transforming vague invitations into clear proposals. Instead of Let's schedule something. Say Thursday at 12 p.m. works for you? This simple change eliminates many silent symptoms of misunderstandings. A useful exercise is to observe how many times you yourself use vague phrases to avoid saying no. This habit reveals symptoms you shouldn't ignore about fear of confrontation. By practicing objective invitations, a person gains clarity and saves emotional energy. Relationships become lighter when expectations are aligned. The most subtle point is realizing that not every lunch needs to happen for the relationship to be polite. The mentor reminds us that respectful honesty is worth more than implicit promises. When someone understands this, they begin to notice positive warning signs: less resentment, less internal pressure, more genuine presence. These are silent signs of social maturity. And when this last illusion falls, the whole set of beliefs accepted without question begins to make more sense, preparing the ground for something greater to come. If you've made it this far, it wasn't out of idle curiosity. It's because something clicked inside. Maybe a phrase resonated more strongly. Maybe an example sounded all too familiar. This is no coincidence. These are silent signals organizing themselves, warning signs that have finally gained language. Now, the game changes. You can no longer pretend you didn't see. The early warning signs that once seemed like details are beginning to form a map. And ignoring this map from now on is costly. It costs energy, time, and direction. Don't ignore what your body has been repeating for years. Real knowledge isn't for entertainment, it's for changing behavior. The question that remains is simple and uncomfortable. What will you do differently tomorrow? Will you continue accepting ready-made ideas, elegant excuses, and empty social contracts, even while feeling the hidden symptoms deep inside? Or will you use this as a practical turning point, changing small decisions, observing your reactions more closely, respecting the signals your body is giving you before they become symptoms you shouldn't ignore? Growth doesn't begin with grand gestures. It begins with small, conscious choices made every day. Now I want to hear from you. Which of these lies did you realize you were living without ever questioning it? At what point did you feel that strange silence, as if something had been revealed? Write in the comments, because naming it is the first step to breaking free from autopilot. And if this content gave you clarity, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Here the idea is simple. Learn to see what almost everyone accepts without thinking, and use that to live with more awareness, less noise, and more control over your own life.